Good day to you, everyone. So today's lesson is about SI units versus imperial units, and that is the international system units in science versus the imperial units, which is basically a way of using the same language across the world when it comes to science and anything science related. Now, the SI units, it's actually originally in French, is International System de Units, which in English is International System Units. And what that is basically it's a metric system and it's powers of 10. Okay, and I'm going to show you the difference between the SI units and imperial units. But imperial units, or the British units or British system, was originally developed, but there are a couple of 2, 3, or 4 countries in the world that still use it, but in a kind of a regular lifestyle way. But in terms of scientific way, we don't use them. We use only metric. All right, let's look at the SI base units and corresponding imperial units now. So I have this table, created this table, and you can see that there are about 7 that are basic. Ignore the force, which says Newton. Newton is a derived SI unit. It's not a base unit. The base unit is in singleton. It's not derived from anything else. So length, mass, time, electric current, which is amp, temperature, you already know that as Kelvin, or Celsius, by the way, degree Celsius, that are both of them are actually SI units. Amount of substance, that's mole. Those of us who are going to be doing chemistry, which it will be in this on this channel as well, we're going to deal with that. And then the luminous intensity, or the light intensity, that's candela or CD. The rest, if you really look at it, is it's a derived unit that you can see, because volume and area is actually based on meter, both, which is originally is the length, but because it's a 3 dimension or it's 2 dimension, you just square them. But if you go through each of these, you notice that there's equivalent, common imperial equivalent there. And here's the thing about the imperial units. There are many forms. For example, it does say here yard and foot, but you could also include inches. Or actually, you can also include miles. Okay, there are so many different kinds. With the mass kilogram, we have for the metric system SI unit, but for the imperial is pound. Second, and the time and the electric current, they don't have equivalent for imperial system, but for temperature it does. That's Fahrenheit. That's what we use it in Canada and in US. Sometimes, of course, in Canada we use Celsius more, but in England and in US they use Fahrenheit. And you can see that there is this conversion between the two. Now, do you need to know this exactly? Not really, you don't. But you need to understand the unit conversion between the two. So I don't think anyone exactly remembers every single unit conversion between the imperial and SI units, but you do need to know a few things, okay? So the first thing is that you need to know the prefixes. All right, what is the prefix? Scientific prefixes. These are the scientific prefixes. All right, and I used from femto to peta, and what that means is that these prefixes, they show up in front of all of these base units. Okay, so for example, this is meter and this is kilogram, right? Now, kilo, these are the given one, but the meter and a second and everything else, you can see if you include the prefix in front of it, you can actually find out the magnitude of a given unit. For example, if you have kilogram, which is right here, that means it is a scientific notation by a factor of 1000. That means 10 to the power of 3. What does that mean? Kilo is 1,000, and you have kilo and then gram. That means 1,000 gram. So 1 kilogram is equal to 1000 gram. Now, we can go ahead and do more. Mega, for example, megagram, that is 10 to the power of 6. So that's 1 million gram. Now you go backwards, you can go back in here micro, for example, microgram. That is 10 to the power of negative 6. Now remember we were doing the scientific notation. And remember, scientific notation is given by this form a times 10 to the power of n, where a has to be between 1 and 10. So it can't be greater than 10 and it can't be less than 1. And I'm going to link in the description below the lesson on the scientific notation so that you can go through it and familiarize yourself with that, because definitely in physics and math and sciences you will need that. That's what we're going to use, scientific notation. And the prefixes are all based on the scientific notation. So as you go through it, centi, like you put a centimeter right here, if you choose that and say, what is centimeter? So another example here, centimeter. So that means that's 1 centimeter is 0.01 of a meter. What does that mean? That means 100 centimeter is equal to 1 meter. So that's what that means. Okay, so that's how you use the prefixes, and you go through it, and each one. Now I have, and I will include all of these tables as a PDF. You can download them and keep them, but you do need to refer to them as often as you can. And for few of them, you may have to memorize the top 3 and the bottom 3 or so. And if you can memorize more, that's fantastic. Up to nano is very common, but anything above that, pico and femto, it becomes less of a common prefixes in science, but we can use them as well. So go ahead, download those PDF files. Okay, now the next thing that I like to talk about is how we change units from one to another. And let's talk about how we go from the prefixes for each one. And I'm going to give you a few examples. So stay with me. So the power of 10 for micro, 10 to the negative 6. So 1 micrometer is 10 to the minus 6 meter. So how would you get that? Well, you just multiply whatever that 1 is by 10 to the minus 6. Let's make it a little bit easier. Let's start up with the kilo. So 1 kilometer or kilometer, that is, kilo is 1000 and meter is meter. So 1 kilometer is 1000 meter. So how do we do that? We multiply this 1 by 1000 and we get 1000 meter. And this is why we have this part right here. It says multiplying by 1000. And that is the conversion math table, and I am going to include this table as well for you. Okay, so download that as well so that you know. Now here's the things. Every time that you're going from the bigger to the smaller value, then you have to multiply. So let's do another example. Let's suppose you want to go from kilogram milligram. Okay, well, to do that, first you have to go from kilogram to gram, from gram to milligram, because they all have this gram as part of the unit and the rest is just the prefix. So 1 kilogram is 1000 gram because kilo means 1,000. Okay, now you can go directly from kilogram to milligram using this, which is right here, what we have, milli, which is 10 to the negative 3, or you're multiplying it by 1000 again. So altogether will be 1 million milligram, because remember, from here, from gram to milligram, right here, you're multiplying by 1000 again. If you're going backwards, you have to divide by 1000 or 10 to the power of negative 3. That's what it is right here. That's what we're doing right here. Okay, that's the milli. So 1 milligram is 0.00. If I want to write it like this, if you want to go backwards, let's do the backwards. So what is 1 milligram? When I say divide, well, 1 milligram is 1 over 1000 gram, which is 0.001 gram, which is 10 to the power of negative 3 gram. Okay, now you're going backwards. So this is where the division comes in. You are dividing. Okay, you're dividing 1 over 1000. That's the 1 milligram to get the gram, right? So if you're going from the smaller unit with the smaller prefix to the base unit and the larger prefix, you have to divide. If you're going from the larger prefix, okay, so you have from 1, let's say megabytes, we all know what that is, 2 bytes. You're multiplying this by the mega, M is the prefix. You come up here and you have to multiply by 10 to the 6. So that's why you have 1. So that's times 10 to the power of 6 will get you that. And that's why 1 megabyte is 1 million bytes. So you're multiplying. If you're going to go the other way, that means you're going to go from bytes to megabytes. You have to divide by 10 to the 6. Okay, so if you have 1 byte, that is 10 to the negative 6 megabytes. Or you can say 0.000001. Okay, that's what that is. So as you go through these practices, when you go, for example, we went through from megabytes to bytes. 1 megabyte is 1000, 1 million bytes, and vice versa. As you go through it, you need to keep practicing these prefixes and conversions so that it comes to you naturally. Don't forget to check out the quiz for sure after going through the lesson. Take out the quiz, do as many questions as you can. The answer key is right there as well, but you need to make sure you know how to do this because if you're taking physics and chemistry and biology, you definitely need them. And I will continuously referring to these. All right, until next time.